President Graham's having internet problems this evening, so he's not able to join us. I'm hoping we will get a few more club members or guests joining us, so I'll keep an eye out for that. Um, I'd like to welcome Jules, our speaker tonight, who's known to a few of us from the beach cleans. I'd also like to welcome Yaina and Dominica, a couple of my international Rotarian friends. It's great to see you guys. It's been a little while since I've caught up with you guys, so maybe we can have a little chance towards the end of the meeting for you guys to say a few words later on. So I think what we'll do, we'll just crack on with things. And I'd like to welcome again our speaker this evening, Jules, who, as I say, a few of us will know from the beach cleans we have run over the last few months, including one just a week or two ago. So she'll be speaking to us about some of the work Marine Conservation Society do, which ties in with beach cleans, hopefully some of the results from the recent beach clean. And there's also a great initiative that she's emailed me about, which I have emailed to a few of our club members, which hopefully, Jules, you can say a few words about that to encourage a few members we've got here tonight. We've got, for instance, Helen, who's our environment officer, so hopefully we can sort of take on the idea you've suggested, which I'm sure we will. And what I'm doing, I'm recording the meeting tonight, so it's those club members who can't make it, they'll get the recording, so they'll still hear the presentation, I'm sure, in due course. So without further ado, I shall pass over to Jules.
Oh, hi. Hello, everyone. I remember Dominica, you were a couple of years ago, you were on the call, weren't you, from Jamaica?
Yes, I used to visit Darren's old club quite regularly, and he used to visit in like 2020, 2021. Yeah. I remember, and I remember your background as well.
Yeah. Oh, I better change it. All right. So I'm just going to talk for about 15 minutes. Is that okay?
That's perfect.
Not too long, because yeah, I'm bored of my own voice. I've been doing so many events. But as Darren said, we did a very wet beach clean the other week, which was yeah, interesting. And so I'm going to talk to you about our beach cleans, and also another little project that it would be nice for you guys to get involved in, as Darren mentioned. So just get to, it always takes me a while to set up my screen, so eventually get there. I can never see the dots. There we go. Is that okay for you guys? Yeah, good. Okay, so if you don't know me, my name's Jules, and I'm the volunteer and community engagement manager for South West England for the Marine Conservation Society, sometimes called MCS. And before I get started, I've just got a little quiz question, which if any of you have been out on the beach with me before, you might know the answer to. Oop. I might have to use my mouse. Oh, hang on, I'm not going forward. There we go. So if you know what these are, either on the left or on the right, or both of them, if you just pop that in the chat. They're very small, just a few millimeters across and quite hard to spot. But yeah, we'll come back to these in a bit. Hang on. Ooh, can't get rid of. There we go. Right. Okay. So I hope that some of you, or most of you, have heard of the Marine Conservation Society, or MCS. We're not MSC, which is the fish labelling organisation, which we get confused with a lot. We're MCS, a national charity working to conserve all aspects of the ocean, and we work in the UK and in UK overseas territories. And our mission is to drive political, cultural and social change so that we end up with healthy seas and coasts for both wildlife and for people to enjoy and to benefit from. So I'm sure you're all aware that marine litter is a problem that results in the death of probably hundreds of thousands of marine animals worldwide each year. We don't know how many, because it's difficult to actually find them afterwards, but we know that entangled animals may drown or starve because they're restricted and tangled up in fishing litter or balloon strings, for example, or they may suffer physical trauma and infections from their wounds. And when man-made litter is accidentally ingested, it can build up so that the animal no longer feels hungry, and eventually that ends up starving. So it's estimated by 2050 that 99% of seabirds, like this albatross chick at the bottom there, will have plastic present in their bodies. So at MCS, we run beach cleans involving volunteers and community groups to remove beach litter around our beautiful UK coast. So the Marine Conservation Society was formed in Ross-on-Wye in Herefordshire in 1978 by local scuba divers, but they didn't dive much locally because Herefordshire isn't near the sea. However, we've been running a beach clean programme called Beach Watch for 30 years, for 30 years, and this year is our 30th year anniversary. So all of our events are found on our website, and most are run by volunteers, a few by staff like myself, and we often rely on help from and collaboration from local groups like the Rotary Club. So we have beach cleans running all year round, but the third weekend in September is an international coastal cleanup, and so we try to get everybody out on the beach over that weekend so that we end up with a picture of what's happening around the world in terms of marine litter on that day. And there are hundreds of events all around the UK over that weekend and the following week. Just last year, we had over 5,000 volunteers take part, including a big bunch of Roborough Rotarians. And UK-wide, we cleaned 50,000 metres of beach, removing 3,000 kilograms of litter. But we also have 30 years of data, because whenever we do a beach clean, we don't just clean the beach, we also do a survey. We count, categorise and record all of the individual litter items we remove, usually within a 100-metre long stretch above the seaweed line. And then we also record other factors to measure survey effort. And what this does is enable us to track levels of beach litter and identify trends in different items to see what's becoming a problem. And that in turn allows us to look for solutions, ideally so we can stop some of the litter at source before it ever reaches the ocean and causes the kinds of damage that I was just describing. Here's a selection of results of the Great British Beach Clean, and just drawing your attention actually to wet wipes. So we had 18 wet wipes per beach, per 100 metres in 2020. And then last year we saw they'd gone up to 22 wipes per 100 metres again. So that shows us that more needs to be done to stop wet wipes being thrown down the toilet, so that they're not reaching our beach. So we can really pinpoint items that need tackling from this data that we're gathering. To help us to try and pinpoint sources and work out how to stop it, we break down the items recorded into the material type, and we also assign their most likely source wherever possible. So litter comes from lots of sources, things like the public, all the stuff we're responsible for throwing away, like cutlery and food containers and all of that. Fishing, as in the fishing industry, sewage-related debris, so stuff that's gone down the loo and ended up coming out through our overflow systems. Shipping, we have fly tipped rubbish, medical items, pollutants, and then quite a lot of it is non-sourced. So it will be small fragments of glass or plastic that we don't really know where they've come from. And generally around 30 to 40% on any beach comes from the public. But if we look at some of the other sources, fishing litter, for example, is around 8% UK-wide and across England. But when we look at southwest beaches, that can be as high as 30% because we have a much bigger fishing industry and rougher seas. So identifying the source and keeping an eye on trends at a regional level as well as nationally helps us to identify where there's scope to develop more local solutions, and also where there's a need for campaigning or education. So we've seen positive effects on our beaches in the last few years. This is a trend from 1993 to 2020, and there was a really big peak in 2017, and then generally over the last few years, the number of litter items has been decreasing, and that's from an upsurge in beach cleaning, increased awareness of plastic pollution, and we can show that it's reflected in this reduction. So everyone doing their bit can make a difference to our beaches, and that's a really great message to give to people and to groups like you and people that have got involved, showing that your help is actually having a positive effect. And our beach clean data also allows us to track the success of measures that have been put in place to actually reduce litter. So we can show that plastic bags, for example, have decreased by 55% since the first charge was introduced in England in 2015. So our data is showing that it's having a positive impact. So some details now about a beach some of you may know well, Bother Sands in Plymouth. And lovely picture of Darren there, which I know he'll enjoy seeing. So we've been cleaning and surveying Bothersand Beach in Plymouth since 1997, and since 2019 we've had the help of local branches of the Rotary Club, facilitated by Darren. He's been great at getting people along and doing a lot of the preparation work, as well as taking fantastic photographs. So big thank you to him and to all of you that have come out to help. It's an important beach that we monitor on behalf of the UK government, who have signed up to record levels of beach litter as part of the OSPAR Convention, where they've agreed to, with 15 other governments in the EU, to look after the North East Atlantic. And as part of that, they have to monitor the litter on beaches, which we do for them. And what we've found over the years is that litter has declined overall on this beach, but it can fluctuate wildly with the wind and tide conditions. And these photographs were all taken in September, when it was nice and sunny. And then we went out last week and it looked nothing like this at all. We all ended up really, really drenched, and it was very, very grey. My pointer's not working. So the Bothersand results I've put together here from September 22 and January 23, just to compare them. So in September we found 27 kilograms and removed it over 100 metres, and we had 37 volunteers. But we only managed a short stretch last week because we got absolutely soaked. But over the 35 metres that we did manage to properly clean and survey, we picked up and surveyed over 3,000 items, comparing to 1,000 items per 100 metre if we extrapolated it up in September. So we were finding a lot more litter, which is unsurprising because the storms had brought in a huge amount, particularly a fishing litter. So you can see that we were recording 30% of what we found was fishing litter last week, compared to 15% in September. But that's still much higher than the English average of around 8%. So we can show that fishing litter has a huge impact on our coast in this area. Also, if you look at microplastics there, in September, it was only 0.54% of what we found, but last week it was 18% of what we found. So there was loads of tiny little bits of plastic that had been thrown up by the waves and thrown onto the beach, and it was pretty much impossible to pick them all up. But that just gives you a flavour of the kind of thing that we can, the kind of information that we can draw from gathering this data. And although beach cleaning is a great thing to do and gives us interesting data, we know that 80% of litter in the ocean actually comes from inland sources. So we'd like to know what's happening away from the beach and get some data on that. So we've come up with this new survey that can be done anywhere by anyone, called Source to Sea Litter Quest. So the idea is it's done in the community, in the street, at a local park, or by a stream or river, but not a big fast flowing one, because then you need special safety equipment and a whole other risk assessment. But the idea is that we can do it somewhere local, somewhere relatively safe, but maybe where litter is collecting. So we're looking to record 14 commonly littered items that often start inland and end up on the beaches. Things like drinks containers and caps, food containers, cups, disposable barbecues, plastic bags, wet wipes, PPE, which in some places is still a problem, and balloons. And litter often travels to the ocean via waterways, so it's a good idea to look for streams, ditches and so on where litter collects. We can then map hotspots of litter in the community and target those areas for future cleanups as well. So in 2022, we ran this Source to Sea Litter Quest as part of the Great British Beach Clean, so only in September, and these are the results. So we had 41 cleans in September, over 3,000 items of litter and 145.3 kilograms. But we'd like this to be an all year round project and to involve more communities, schools, informal groups like Cubs, Scouts and Guides. And it's a great way to get communities working together to do a local cleanup. In Plymouth, I've done one with local students and a community group to help clean up the Hoe. And then we were able to identify the west of the Hoe as a hotspot for litter. And so groups can then target further cleanup activities in that area. So we found a lot of stuff, a lot of drinks containers mainly, huge number of bags of it actually. And then in Launceston town, ran one which is a hilly inland town, Cornwall. We involved a home educators group, parents, children and a school, and it was a bit of a hill race running up and down. Both of those groups could continue the learning for the children with a follow-up lesson that we have where they map where the litter in their town would end up in the sea, which actually ended up being in Plymouth. So that was great fun to do, and yeah, but you know, quite hard work. So to return to our quiz question, what are these? Did anybody know? I can't see the chat. Darren, did anyone know what these are? Did most people know?
Yeah, there are a few people there, a few sort of nerdles. One person said nerdles on the left, fishing weights on the right, but I think we're both nerdles, aren't we?
So these are nerdles on the left. Are they on your left as well? Yeah. Nerdles, or sometimes called mermaid's tears. So these are smooth, tiny plastic pellets. And then on the right, we've got bio beads. So they're both just a few meters across, and you really need to get down on the ground to see them, or maybe even using a sieve to separate them out from the sandy areas. And in September 2019, we found 746 of these in an hour and a half on Bobbysand Beach. And the difference between them is really the ridges that you can see on the bio beads, and they're much rougher plastic, but they're both what we call primary microplastics, in that they're formed to be microplastics rather than breaking down from other things. So nerdles are small plastic pellets that are the raw materials, or the pre-production plastic, which are the building blocks of pretty much all our plastic products, from water bottles to buckets. They're small, they're light, they float in water, and they're made of various types of plastic, including PET. 50,000 are used to make 1 kilogram of plastic, and there's 600 in one plastic bottle. But they're transported all around the world by ships, by road, and they often spill. And they also spill sometimes in the production process. It's a massive industry, but there's no proper regulation or obligation for a polluter to clear them up if they're spilled. And unfortunately, they do spill pretty often. And because they're plastic, they last a long time. so we can still find them years after a spill has happened. Biobeads are used for filtering water in biological aerated flooded filter sewage treatment works. So generally smaller treatment works, and the water is filtered through them and toxins stick to these ridged. They have a high surface area which attracts toxins to them. They're usually polyethylene based, black, grey or green. And 8 out of the 12 UK water companies use these biobeads, and they're lost when the sewage treatment system malfunctions or when they're topped up. It's claimed not ever lost, but we can prove otherwise because we find them quite a lot. So we can also look for nurdles and biobeads in our litter quest events and count them, as we've done on Bovisand Beach. So FIDRA are a charity we work with who are specially tracking them around the world to find out where they are and where they're coming from. So we add our counts to the Great Global Nurdle Hunt results, and they would like people all around the world to help them. So it's really simple. You just go and look for nurdles and biobeads, called how long you search for, roughly how many you found and how many people looked, and then you can upload it to their website with pictures. And these are some Nurdle Hunt global results. So if you go to their website, you can zoom in to see more. So it's good that we've got a couple of international people, because it'd be great to have you guys taking part of where you are if you don't already. So our proposal is to run an initial sort of pick in Roborough with a Nurdle Biobeads Hunt 2, if that's viable. So Darren says there's a stream and a creek near to where the Rotary Club is based in Tamerton Folio. If I said that right, or is it Folliot?
Folliot.
Folliot, where there have been litter picks there in the past. So that could fit in with this perfectly. So we could get some local schools and groups, maybe like the Scouts involved, and some ideas for dates. Obviously, need to fit in with you guys, but in March it's British Science Week. In April it's Citizen Science Month. So because we'll be counting and recording, we're doing a bit of citizen science. And in May it's International Plastic Free Day on the 25th. So yeah, it's up to you guys really. We'll try and fit in together, but I think it could be a really nice project for us to join in with. Yeah, do I have any? Yeah, so thank you, and I hope you'll join in. I've got a little survey questionnaire which I could either pop it in the chat. Yeah, I could probably pop it in the chat, so if you don't mind filling that in. So any thoughts, ideas?
Well, I was going to say, Jules, I think that was absolutely brilliant, and I'm sure from the guys in our club here who I've spoken to about the inland survey, I'm sure we could do something on doing one of those months. But it's interesting what you're saying just a minute ago about the microplastics with the beach clean we did just a couple of weeks ago back in September, because I remember back in September I was on my hands and knees with a couple of the girls from the ladies rugby team, and we were struggling to actually find nurdles. We just couldn't see them at all. Yeah, 2 weeks ago, I didn't even have to bend down. I could just sort of look down, and by my feet, surrounded by nurdles. So they're so easy to spot. So and like you say, I'm sure some of our international guests here tonight could hopefully take part in this as well, because certainly from looking at the map there, I'm sure Dominique, I'm sure in Jamaica, for instance, I'm sure you guys could do something along those sort of lines. Now I saw some questions for a hand raised there. I think was that Ron and Maureen had a question there. So if you want to unmute yourself there.
Oh, yeah, somebody else went first.
What's up from Jana? Thanks. Nice presentation. Have we got Dominica? Do you want to ask a question?
Dominica, you go first.
Sure. I was actually going to say I've been involved in a lot of beach cleanups, because every September when the International Coastal Cleanup takes place, it's huge here. Rotary clubs and schools and other groups come out, and I'm very familiar with those forms to fill in and say how many pounds of this and that and the other you pick up and what you pick up. What is interesting is that some years ago, the government here banned the use of those plastic carrier bags that we used to get at the supermarket. They're now banned.
Yeah.
And the following year, when, yes, another Rotary club went out, not mine, and one of the members of that club told me they didn't find any of those. We used to have masses and masses of them on the beaches, washing up or thrown down or whatever. They blow in the wind, and there were none. The big problem we have here is the plastic bottles that soft drinks come in. Because when I went out in September, that's what we were finding. And they because when they're empty, they're so light. It's not just the water that pushes them around, but the wind pushes them around. We're finding them under the bushes and so on that grow at the edge of the beach. We were finding them like in the roots of these plants. I mean, they were everywhere. Yeah. And most of the things that we were picking up, it's absolutely dreadful. It's awful.
That's why we're trying to record some of those away from the beach as well, because they're a big problem, not just at the beach, but especially inland, because people just chuck them wherever they are. So the reason why we want to monitor them inland as well is for evidence for deposit return schemes. So our government have been dragging their heels for quite a long time about introducing a deposit return scheme for drinks containers, and we know it works because it's been used in Australia, Norway, other countries. So it really needs more evidence and a bigger push to get them to really push that forward.
Ron?
But yeah, do you do a nurdle hunt in Jamaica?
I think she's missed herself.
Hi, Jules. I was just going to ask about nurdle hunts. Would the increase that you noticed in January be a result of the major spill off Brittany towards the end of last year? Because there's a lot of three of the ministries or communities on the Brittany edge are actually issuing summonses. They're open because they don't know who to send them to, but as a press thing, because there's so much there's been thrown up on the Brittany beaches towards the end of last year and through the beginning of this year, that they found there's just too much to actually remove. Beaches like Pornick, for instance, have been devastated by it.
Yeah, probably, and it's a combination of, it wasn't just nurdles, there were loads of tiny bits of plastic that have been smashed up by the storms, and then you've got a double whammy there of spills and then rough seas that throw them high up onto the beach. So yeah, there was just so many we couldn't count. And I did a beach cleaning in Lyme Bay the day before, and it was the similar story, same story, absolutely loads, but actually quite a lot of them in Lyme in particular were biobeads. So we think a spill happened from one of the water treatment places there as well. Yeah, so
Helen,
I just was listening with a great interest of all the information that you've got there, Jules. I was quite ignorant to the fact that these surveys were all going on, because the last 2 trips that you've had to Bovisand, I've been out of the country. And the first time I was out of the country, I was in America. And I've been to America twice this past year. And I was quite saddened to see, I visited quite a number of different states when I was there, how every day the plastic bags are in the supermarket, and the message is just not got through, to the, I'm not saying every state, but I must have visited about 6 when I was there last year, and they're just, everybody is still going in the supermarket and coming out with a plastic bag. So your organization, this Marine Conservation Society, is it international, or do you have any links with, a comparable American association who could perhaps share all what you just shared about the plastic bags, you know, how impactful that could be in around their coasts around America.
Yeah, so we submit data from MCS for the UK part of the International Coastal Cleanup, and we submit it to an American company, no, not company, charity. His name has slipped my mind at the moment, but they organise the International Coastal Cleanup, and they're US based, and so they also do US surveys on that same weekend. But as we were just saying, when you, as Dominica was saying, some countries have introduced a total ban on single-use plastic bags, and actually that works really well, because I didn't go into it in my presentation, but between last year and this year, our figures overall, although there's been an overall decline since the charge was increased, we're starting to see it creep up again in the UK, or in England and Wales in particular, because the charge isn't now enough to deter people. So yeah, the outright ban is a much better, because I've been to the Gambia as well, and they have a complete ban, and it used to be bags all tangled in the mangroves, and now it's just not there. So yeah, pushing for a ban on those.
Ban's better, because just thinking about it, where I was when you were getting all wet, I was getting frozen and snowed out. I was in the French Alps, and I most probably haven't been to that particular place for 11 years, where I revisited. And this was way before, you know, the fashion of no bags, which kind of maybe started in Modbury. And I went to the shop, you know, to get some stuff, and it was like there was no bag, you know, and I was scrabbling around for a box to take it back to the, you know, the apartment. So they 11 years ago had banned the use of plastic bags in the Alps, because they didn't want it, you know, all going, you know, and spoiling the environment. And you know that I was there last week, and it's, you know, it's still the same policy. So you know, it's encouraging that some countries take that step, and then it's disheartening that other ones, you know, don't take any step, you know. So the more that the charities can do to put the pressure on the, you know, powers to be, then I'm very happy to support that as best as I can.
Yeah, I mean, the International Coastal Cleanup, it does put together all that data. So it shows, for example, that worldwide, it's still cigarette butts are the most littered item, in that they're the most dropped item. But yeah, it does have data, and there is data that where countries have that kind of policy, they have less plastic bags. So yeah, but even when you have that, so our government is still dragging their feet over deposit return scheme, even though we can show that in countries where they have it, they have less problem with plastic drink bottles. They've done about 3 consultations, but there's nothing else to ask. Yeah, it works, and you know. So yeah.
Okay,
I don't know if people have seen Ron's just put a comment. Ron Morning put a comment in the chat room saying it. I just got up. I think that France have banned plastic bags in all retail outlets around about 2010. So, like I say, if some places can do it,
people can get on with it. You know, once you haven't got the option of a bag, you become creative to find other means of carrying your stuff. So yeah, but it's taking that, it's being brave enough, you know, to take that step.
I see Dominica's got a hand raised again. So Dominica?
I was going to say that we I've become quite used to taking a shopping bag or shopping bags from home the way we used to do many years ago. Like when my mother used to go shopping, she used to have a cloth bag or a basket or something, and many of us have started doing that again. I was in the United States earlier last year, and let's see. Sorry, somebody's trying to call me, but I'll get back to her. Yes, in the state of Maine, they have very similar rules to the ones they have in Jamaica. So you don't get plastic area bags in any of the supermarkets there, and everybody walks around with their proper cloth shopping bag. But in Florida, I mean, anything goes there, and plastic bags galore. But talking about groups that do beach cleanups and so on, I was very impressed with a Rotary club in Texas that I used to visit online, that a whole lot of Rotary clubs on the American side and the Mexican side of the Rio Grande were having a river cleanup. And of course, as you were saying, a lot of the rubbish that goes onto the beaches actually originated on some riverbank. And that was a big coordinated thing by, I mean, dozens of Rotary clubs on both sides of the border. So that type of thing is going on, but I think it all depends on, you know, people's interests and passions and what the problem is.
We were hoping that this might act as a little, sorry, we were hoping it might act as a little pilot, and we could then show to other Rotary clubs, hey, here's something you can do without having to be near the beach. And, you know, yeah, so that was part of the idea.
Right. Just
I've put in the,
sorry, Jules.
I've put in the chat a link to the International Coastal Cleanup, so they do a snapshot around the world of it's called the Trash Free Seas Report, so that's quite interesting to read. And then I've put also there a link to a little survey just about the talk and did you find it useful and stuff like that. So yeah, it's anonymous, so you can say, no, terrible, or I'll never know.
Well, as I say, Jules, I'll actually share a recording of this talk to the club members who couldn't make it tonight. So I'll also make sure they get that link as well, so they can complete that once they've got around to watching it. One thing I'd like to just take from this, as I said, I'm sure, and hopefully Helen, Jeff, Ron, and Maureen will agree here, but I'm sure our club will look to do something with the inland cleanup. March, April, May time sort of thing. We've got a business meeting in a couple of weeks' time, so hopefully we can put some to the club members and get dates sorted out with yourselves then. But I was also thinking of what you were saying about the international aspect. Obviously, like with Dominica, Karen, and Nina here, hopefully like in the Philippines, Lebanon, Jamaica, hopefully the three of you could hopefully maybe take something away from this talk and maybe do something in your own areas there as well. I know Dominica's mentioned a few things there. I don't know if Karina or Nina, if you want to say a few words about any situation in your particular areas at all or not. You don't have to if you don't want to, but if you want to, you'd be welcome to say a few words first. Second. And then no, that's fine. Maureen, did you have your hand raised? Yep, far away.
Our next speaker meeting on the 7th of February, we've got Camden Foliot Conservation Society coming along. So perhaps we can get them involved in some form of cleanup in our area.
I'm sure Dennis would love to do something like that. I'm sure he'd be very much involved. And
I know he keeps us informed of Plymouth River keepers and things like that.
Well, he
which
also
are sort of source to see sort of things anyway.
He also puts together the sort of village sort of newsletter. So I'm sure he'll rally a number of the local residents of the area here as well to come on board. So again, we can get residents on board. As George said, we can get people like the Scouts, Cubs, etc. on board as well. So I'm sure there'll be we won't be short for volunteers, shall we say?
Perhaps the school will want to do something as a project for the children.
Exactly. So definitely, as I say, I'm sure we will not be short of volunteers. So we just need to sort of pick a date really, and I'd say let's run with it. But what I'm going to do, Stopey showed a time sort of thing. Helen, as a club environment officer, if you want to sort of maybe sort of look at some potential dates, March, April, May time, and maybe come back to the club in a week or two's time, and I think we can sort of fix something up there. And Jules will be in touch to get something sorted there.
Great, thank you. I'll send some dates I can't do.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Jules, could you send us the details of that slide that had all the cleanup things, the Citizens Month and
Yes.
citizen science and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I can send you all of the slides. Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
That'd be great.
I did make a note of that, Maureen, in my scribbly notes, but it'd be handy
I'm
if you
sure you
get
did.
Google over. Thanks.
There's some sort of day pretty much any month, so any date we pick that suits us both, I'm sure we can tie it into something.
Right, well, time is drawn to a closer.
Dominica,
Oh,
I'm just going to say, Dominica, I was in Montego Bay about 3 years ago, and I thought it was the cleanest parts of the world I've ever seen.
Really? That's extremely good to know. Yeah, we've had a bit of an issue more recently because we were short of garbage trucks, but that seems to have been resolved because a visitor spoke to me the other day and said, well, she was going from the airport. She noticed how clean everything was. It's very good to know because sometimes we're not sure how well we're doing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
and that just shows what small world it is as well. So as I say, time is drawn to a close. So thank you all ever so much for coming along this evening. Jules, for your great talk as usual, and I'm sure we can build on the work together there. So thank you for your time tonight. And also to our international guests as well. It's great to see you guys. It's been a while since I managed to catch up with some of you, so it's great to see you guys after too long time. And hopefully we'll see you all again soon. So thanks all very much for attending, and stay safe and see you all soon.
All right.